all. This is your Professor Ian. Welcome to my lecture on the sonnet, the ever exciting sonnet, the form of poetry that maybe gave you nightmares in a high school English class. Let's talk about it. You'll notice I call my slideshow Poetry as Argument. So that should give you a hint that maybe where I'm going with this, talk about the sonnet. So let's just dive into it. A little bit of history. So the sonnet was made popular by an Italian writer in the 1300s named Francesco Petrarca. I hope I'm pronouncing that within reasonable margin of error. My Italian is non-existent, so something like that. So this was, the beginning of what we call the Renaissance, the early modern period, this rediscovery or reinvestment in ideas of classical art and beauty. So he started writing them. They became popular. They only became popular in English when a couple English writers, Thomas Wyatt among them, and the Earl of Surrey, started writing them in English, writing their own versions of sonnets in the early 1500s, and started making this a popular form of poetry to write in the English language. About the sonnet. A sonnet is this very specific, very constricted form of poetry. It has to have 14 lines. It follows a specific rhyme scheme, depending on the type of sonnet it is. It can be about any subject, but typically traditional sonnets are about love or nature, right? The main thing about a sonnet is that it introduces a problem or a question at the beginning of the poem, right? Sets up a problem, and then a resolution is offered at the end of the poem after the turn, right, which we call the volta, which is Italian, as you would imagine. There's always a turn, sometimes at line 6, sometimes at line 8, or line 8 or line 12, I should say, right? There's always this turn in the poem and then a move towards a resolution, some kind of solution to the problem that's been set up. And a sonnet is written in iambic pentameter. And iambic pentameter, of course, we've talked about this, is a line of poetry with 10 beats, right? An iamb is 2 beats or 1 foot, right? So penta means 5. So the line has 5 feet of 2 beats, hence 10 beats, right? Meter is the word we use to talk about rhythm of the poem, right? So iambic, it has that 2 beat per foot, and that's the iambic is also that rising beat, 5 feet per line of poetry. So the meter is 5 feet of iambs. Hope that wasn't super confusing. I'm confused after explaining it, but it's basically 5 so it's right, per line of poetry. It's supposed to be that with a specific rhyme structure. So you can see there's a lot going on in setting up a sonnet, right? It has to have that rhythm, and it has to have that rhyme structure, and it has to be 14 lines, and it has to set up a problem, have a turn, and then reach the solution at the end. So it's a very constricted form of poetry, right? It's very prescriptive, if you want to call it that, if you want to go with that word. Right, so the Italian sonnet, the kind of original, is also called the Petrarchan sonnet, after Petrarch, who, as I was just talking about, Francesco Petrarca. The Italian sonnet is named after him. And this form of poetry has an octet, so an 8-line stanza, and then a sestet, a 6-line stanza. So 14 lines divided into that division. And the octet sets up the problem, and then the volta, right, is at the beginning of the sestet, and the sestet kind of thinks about a resolution to the problem. And the rhyme structure begins with A, B, A, B, or A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A, this very tight rhyme structure that sets up the problem, but then can conclude in a variation of C, D, E, right? So it could be C, D, E, C, D, E, C, D, C, D, E, E, like a rhyming couplet at the end. There are different forms the sestet can take, but the octet, the first 8 lines, have to be written in this specific way. Okay? And of course, as I said, the volta, the turn, occurs between the octet and the sestet, so the beginning of the sestet. So let's see an example so I don't confuse everybody further. This is London, 1812 by William Wordsworth. So, Milton, thou shouldest be living at this hour. England hath need of thee, she is fen of stagnant waters, altar, sword, and pen. Fireside, the heroic wealth of hall and bower have forfeited their ancient English dower of inward happiness. We are selfish men. Oh, raise us up, return to us again, and give us manners, virtue, freedom, power. Thy soul was like a star, and dwelt apart. Thou hast a voice whose sound was like the sea, pure as the naked heavens, majestic free. So didst thou travel on life's common way in cheerful godliness, and yet thy heart the lowliest duties on herself did lay. Okay, so we're not going to unpack it too much. I just want you to. I was trying to emphasize that the iambic pentameter as I was reading. You can see the rhyme structure I've charted here, right? So A B B A, A B B A, C D D, E C E, right? So you can play with that structure at the end, but this has to be very set. And you can see too that if you look at the first octet, the first 8 lines is setting up the problems with England, right? At this time, England is stagnant. It's they've forfeited their ancient English dower. There's it's a a time of decline for England, right? This is the first 8 lines are setting up, and the last 6 lines are setting up how great Milton is. And he's talking about John Milton, the poet, the guy who wrote Paradise Lost. So Milton. The last 6 lines are about how great Milton is and why he would be the savior of England. Okay, so that's the Italian sonnet. The English sonnet has 2 forms, 2 major forms: the Shakespearean and the Spenserian, and they're named after Edmund Spenser and William Shakespeare, 2 of the biggest proponents or users of the sonnet and developers of the English style. So they both include 3 quatrains, so 3 stanzas of 4 lines, and then a couplet at the end, so a 2-line rhyming couplet. So for Shakespearean sonnets, it goes A B A B, C D C D, E F E F, G G, right? So 3 quatrains with that kind of ballad kind of rhyming, right, which we've talked about before, and then a final rhyming couplet at the end. The Spenserian is a much more intertwined rhyme structure. It goes A B A B, B C B C, C D C D, E E. So you get a repetition of rhyming through each of the quatrains. So it's kind of like more like a sestina or something in that sense, where you get this repetition through the different quatrains. Anyways, and the volta can be after the 8 lines or after 12 lines. So it can change a bit in the English style. So let's take a look at an example, Shakespearean sonnet. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. For every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal sunshine shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou would oust. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, our eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Right? So you can see the rhyme structure, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, and then the final rhyming couplets. You can see the volta comes after rhyme 8, and it's signaled with that but, right? That's oftentimes in our writing how we signal a turn. But, however, think words like that. So, but, right? So setting up the problem in the first 8 lines and then reaching some kind of resolution with this nice kind of snappy couplet at the end to really sum things up, right? As long as you live in poetry, you live forever, even though you will fade in real life, is basically what he's saying. So the real question here, this is all stuff that probably gives a lot of people flashbacks to high school. The real question here is, why were they one of the dominant forms of English language poetry? Why do people still write them? Because people do. People still write sonnets. I know it's hard to believe sometimes, but people write them. They were a dominant form of poetry, of courtly poetry, like, highbrow poetry for a long time, and very influential after that, since they've been introduced in English. I would say that much like the essay, the sonnet allows for a standard poetic form for authors to introduce ideas and explore solutions. This is why I call this slideshow poetry's argument. Another way I like to think about it is in terms of memes, right? You probably know that I love memes. And I tend to think of poetic forms, especially something as constricted as the sonnet, as being similar to a meme, right? When I show you this meme of Chuck Norris, right? He's got these Uzis and he's looking all tough. You don't have to really know who Chuck Norris is. We all know what this meme means. It's going to be a joke about how tough he is in this like absurdly ridiculous way, right? Chuck Norris built the hospital he was born in. It's just goofy. It's ridiculous how, making fun of, machismo and how tough he is. You don't have to know who Chuck Norris is really. I don't think I've ever seen a Chuck Norris movie or TV show or anything. I've just seen like clips of him, but it doesn't matter, right? Because I understand the meme. I understand the form of the joke in this sense, this meme. And so whatever you write here, I know what to expect based on this meme. So I would suggest to think about a sonnet in a similar way. When you write a sonnet, you're writing in a specific form. Okay, the first 8, 12 lines set up a problem, and then there's a turn and a solution to that problem. It's all very measured. When you read it, you know what to expect in a sonnet. And when you write one, you're telling your reader what to expect, right? It's basically like using a meme, a kind of template for your idea, for your argument. Another example of this, getting even kind of like deeper into this idea of form, is this idea of the blazon, right? And the contrablazon. So this was a very popular technique within the sonnet, a way of writing a sonnet. So blazon is French for coat of arms or shield, right? So a literary blazon catalogs the physical attributes of a subject, usually female. It is a fairly sexist history of the sonnet. The device was made popular by Petrarch, right? That Italian I've been talking about, and used extensively by Elizabethan poets, so poets during the reign of Elizabeth I, including Shakespeare. And the contrablazon inverts that convention, describing the wrong parts of the female body or negating them completely. So this is a way that poets would go back and forth to talk about beauty and other ideas. So here's one by Spenser, right, for whom the Spenserian sonnet is named. Coming to kiss her lips, such grace I found, me seemed I smelled a garden of sweet flowers, that dainty odors from them threw around, for damsels fit to deck their lovers' bowers. Her lips did smell like unto gilly flowers, her ruddy lips like unto roses red, her snowy brows like budded bellamours, her lovely eyes like pinks but newly spread, her goodly bosom like a strawberry bed, her neck like a bunch of columbines, her breasts like lilies ere their leaves be shed, her nipples like young blossomed jessamines. Such fragrant flowers do give most odorous smell, but her sweet odor did them all excel. Right? So this is called a blazon. He's cataloging the parts of this woman, getting pretty private here, and cataloging them and comparing them to flowers. And it gets a little carried away. But this was this form of sonnet that, much like a meme, gave a template for the writer to engage this kind of poetic endeavor. And here's Shakespeare's contrablazon, so inverting this form. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun, which is a kind of brown. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes there is more delight than in the breath from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Right? So he's turning this convention on its head to talk about his true love for, this woman that he's writing about in this poem. Right? He's saying, sure, she's fine, but she's her eyes are nothing like the sun. She doesn't smell as good as flowers. She's not. Her voice isn't as beautiful as music, right? But I love her more than these false compare, right? And then she belied with false compare, right? So these false comparisons, he's saying, of the blazon. So you can see here how the sun is working as a template for this argument, and in a sense, Shakespeare, in a real way, Shakespeare is making an argument about the limitations of poetic metaphors, right? And he's using this sonnet form as a way to launch that argument. So anyways, that's just a short taste of the sonnet. Thank you very much.